Theatre here in the North Hall at NAB Show 2017. It is a pleasure to see you here. Thank you for joining us. Our next presentation is Tegna presents The Future of OTT Advertising, Meeting Customer Expectations with Advanced TV Experiences. OTT viewing is skyrocketing, and with it, there is emerging new frontiers of advertisers. Advertisers and marketeers need help navigating this highly fragmented space. But what strategies should advertisers adopt to reach this highly fragmented space? What's the most effective ways and what kinds of campaigns work best to reach campaigns work best to reach cord cutters and those migrating away from the traditional linear TV? What are the challenges that face this fast-growing segment as it scales? This session will address OTT advertising strategies, monetization of content for OTT, how to meet customer expectations, and the importance of data in advanced TV experiences. This is a Sprocket session. Your moderator this afternoon is Stacey Huggins, CMO of MadHive, and your panelists, David Haney, CitySpark, Jim Wilson, Premion, also of Tegna, Adam Helfgott, from MadHive, the CEO and co-founder, Raul Manesco from Pluto TV, and Giancarlo Maranchiri from Color TV. Please, a round of applause for your panelists and presenter this afternoon. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, is this working? Okay. Thanks for being here today. We're excited about this panel. There's some really great minds in OTT up here for you. They're in the trenches. It's a very new and fast-moving industry, and there's a lot of questions that folks have all the time. So these guys are definitely, I would say, the most knowledgeable, because they're in it every day. So thanks for being here. I just want everybody to introduce themselves really quickly. Can we start with you?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Hello?
Yes.
There we go. Raul Maranescu with Pluto TV. We are probably the leading free internet TV service in the U.S. We're trying to build a platform that has not been built yet, building an OTT platform for free ad-supported advertising, and I'm the head of sales.
Hello, I'm Giancarlo Maniaci, I'm the co-founder of ColorTV.com. We're an end-to-end platform for OTT, mobile, and web, anywhere that video consumption takes place. And we do video intelligence, we do advanced advertising, and we do video personalization across all those platforms and devices.
Hey everybody, I'm Jim Wilson. I'm the president of Premion, which is a division of Tegna. Premion is an OTT ad services company focused on bringing regional and local advertising to a number of networks, some of which are here today. Networks, OTT networks, and media companies that are looking for advertising and solutions in the OTT space.
Hi, I'm Adam Helfgott, co-founder of MadHive. We are an ad tech company that use blockchains for data management. We have a suite of products for the buy and sell side, and we focus on transparency and efficiency to help companies better use the data they already have.
I'm Dave Haney, CEO and co-founder of CitySpark. We have a hyper-local aggregation technology to aggregate local content, provide feeds of that both for OTT and other platforms, and combine that with user-generated content and a long tail of self-serve advertising.
Great, thanks guys. So why don't we start first by just setting some context here, because there's a lot of debate about what the definition of OTT really is and what does it include and what does it not. So, you know, a lot of times we think of TV everywhere as, do we think of it as OTT? Because it does require a cable subscription. How do we define advanced TV? What's the difference? What does addressable actually mean? Or is OTT only that which streams through an IP address, through a television screen, or another smart TV? So I'm curious here what these folks think about what the definition is. So Jim, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm confused by what you just said. It's true. OTT is a confusing space. We launched Premion last year, and we have been, Tegna, as you may know, has sales offices in 38 markets, and we're also working with all the big agencies in all the major markets as well, and we get asked this question all the time. And there's a lot of confusion around what OTT is. It's a pretty broad term. Advanced TV is a pretty broad term, and probably everyone here is probably going to define OTT differently. I will say for us, we are sort of connected to the concept that OTT is off your cable box, and that it is premium video delivered over the top, essentially, as they call it. We specifically at Premion are focused on OTT in the long form premium episodic space, and so OTT is short form. I always say YouTube is OTT, but also our partners Pluto, Sling, partners Fox and others have content that's delivered over the top in long form. So specifically for us at Premion, we're focused on long form, but OTT is pretty broad concept and includes both short form and long form.
Great. Anybody else want to chime in on the differences there?
I would add much to what Jim said. Long form premium content from our perspective, from a Pluto perspective, it's video everywhere. So we're across a dozen or so apps and devices. We're everywhere. We have to be everywhere, from the small screen to the large screen. So from a Pluto perspective, when we're defining what OTT means to us, it's being everywhere, really.
I think we should change the name from OTT. It's no longer over the top. It's over everywhere. So maybe that's part of the confusion.
Well, a lot of ad agencies are now just calling it advanced TV, and they're bucketing in programmatic, advanced, addressable, all into advanced TV. It makes it a bit easier, I would imagine. So any other thoughts or debate on the topic of what OTT is?
I think it's just, advanced TV or just premium video. It comes up a lot with agencies. And you said earlier that VOD is lumped into the OTT bucket. I think a lot of the agencies just view premium video as premium video, and basically they put it all together, whether it's long form or short form.
Great. So when we talk about OTT in general, we should probably look at the consumer experience first, because it's the most important. Apple TV's done a great deal to make discovery on OTT a lot easier with voice-activated search, but that is still a big problem. It's OTT, you can pretty much fire up whatever content you want, but it's more difficult to find the content, so discovery is a big issue, which means that traffic is a big issue when you're a publisher trying to sell OTT. So I'll ask these panelists what they think about how you drive traffic through discovery. Have you heard of any great innovations? Are you employing any great innovations to help keep the traffic numbers high on OTT, even though there's tons of fragmentation?
I'll take this one.
Great.
Well, firstly, most of the traffic, really, if we're talking like traditional OTT and you're talking Roku, Amazon, Chromecast, Apple TV, really the users are right now, today, on Roku. Who knows where that's going to happen in the future. I think the first steps in order to get traffic is to do the very obvious. When we look back at what local businesses would do to SEO their web pages on Google to just be found, I think the very first step, something that we do, is search and discovery, making sure all of the data is there, which is sometimes not as easy, but to make sure it's present and that users can actually find the content that they're looking for and where that content actually lives, because it can live in multiple different apps. And I think the second step is, again, being biased because Color TV focuses on this, is retention. When we think of Facebook, Facebook is so unique because everyone in this audience has a different Facebook feed. We all go there to watch content, read news, and everyone has a different experience. And I think it's important to continually curate that experience for end users, meaning that when I turn on my TV and I watch content, it becomes more and more personalized for my taste. It cuts out the waste of time to find the content, which in turn builds loyalty and a higher retention rate for users.
That's interesting. So tell me, how does Color TV handle addressing all members of the household? Because if you're using one IP address, how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, there's 3 ways. It just depends on the implementation that a customer wants it. One way is every device that we have here sitting in the audience has an IDFA or an Android ID or an IP address. So at the very least, like the fallback, you can tie everything back to a device ID, and you could sort of understand the different times that people watch content and understand the users in the household. Not the optimal way to do it, but it's a way that it can be done if someone doesn't have the second or third options. Second option is passing some sort of ID in, where we can, instead of creating our own user profile, we can take any profile from a network and build on top of that. And then lastly, just think of like Netflix. Everyone probably has an account, and for me, I got tired of seeing Bob the Builder in my recommendations because of my kids. So you create a mom, dad, and a kids section as a profile. So those are 3 ways that you could bucket those.
Great. So David, I'll throw this question over to you as well, because I know CitySpark takes curation to the long tail end and focuses on the local audience. So how are you guys curating local experiences on CitySpark?
Yeah, in addition to matching up content with user ID authentication, device ID, we also can match it based on the content they're watching. So if you use the J bar or the L bar on the screen, there's a lot of hyperlocal content that can be matched up with what people are viewing. So if somebody's watching streaming event about it's a soccer game, or it's a rock climbing festival, or a whole channel around rock climbing, we can provide custom hyperlocal events, all the rock climbing events going on all over your community based on that content that they're watching.
That's great. So OTT obviously has some amazing targeting capabilities, and that's really the biggest technical advantage to OTT. So bringing in the local audience, you can now target by zip code, and Jim's organization, Premion, does a fabulous job at bringing in inventory and matching it with local advertising. So let's talk a little bit about the targeting capabilities. So what does it take to move more ad dollars? Because it's still early days. So what does it take to move more ad dollars from traditional broadcast linear over into an OTT buy? And what are some of the problems that we're seeing as this starts to scale?
I think one of the areas is early days, and so a lot of the ad agencies are internally, structurally trying to figure out where does OTT live, right? You can look at OTT in its early days as a reach and extension vehicle off of broadcast, and so Tegna being a broadcast company, and certainly with those relationships on the broadcast side, we've been able to see a lot of success coming out of the broadcast buy. Inside of the agencies, though, they're kind of grappling with it, right? Because it looks like broadcast, but it's really digital. And so as the capabilities in targeting and reporting and overlays and engagement increase in the space, there's a great opportunity for us to shift and get dollars out of the digital buckets as well. So I would say, one thing that I keep saying over and over again, the biggest pain point in the industry is really around education, and that the agencies are seeing a lot of different suppliers coming in and talking about what Stacy started this panel off with is, what is OTT? And there are all these different providers of OTT. But I think education is one, capabilities, and increasingly toward digital capabilities will shift more dollars.
I think there's a couple things. So I remember when I started my last company, and we'd call up agencies and say, "Hi, we're doing mobile advertising." And we would get answers saying, "Well, gee, we don't do mobile advertising." And fast forward to today, we're living in a mobile-first world. And I think it's the same thing that's happening in agencies. If you look at all the reports, the OTT ad spend is growing like at 27% compounded annual growth rate. It's shifting. I can tell you in terms of the issues, I think there are a couple of them, but one mainly to do some sort of programmatic buy, because buying on OTT is generally, in my opinion, better for an advertiser. You get to track. You know your ad was seen. You have pixels. You can track every single step. A user could take an action and you can run attribution on that, which is very difficult to do on linear TV, but it's very doable on TV. You could see if someone saw the Charmin commercial and then went to their mobile device and actually bought the Charmin toilet paper and run attribution that way. So I think from an advertising perspective, it will be a superior product when it's done. From a pipes or distribution perspective today, when most of these agencies are buying programmatically, a lot of this data is not getting passed back to the buying platforms, meaning that the buying platforms are buying sort of in a blind fashion, and they're probably doing that on purpose so that all the inventory gets eaten up. And so the data like maybe household income or data about the content, so that you could match an ad with the right content, that stuff's not being passed today. And I think once that stuff starts to pass up there and aligns itself with how mobile is done today, I think the agencies are going to be buying in a frenzy because it'll be a superior product compared to linear, in my opinion.
And so I know a lot of people talk about one of the biggest issues with OTT as being a problem in terms of the consumer experience is frequency capping. Sometimes we see the same ad over and over again. And I know data companies that specialize in over-the-top video, like MadHives, are doing a lot to try and address that. So Adam, any thoughts on the frequency capping issue?
Sure, that's one major issue, the frequency capping. But to go back to Jim and Giancarlo's points, there's an infrastructure problem that OTT in the delivery and from the advertising side and the pipes for the data. It's it's a little nascent. We're not quite there yet where we are with mobile or digital. And there's a lot of features that are available in what looks like TV, a traditional linear TV experience, but we're actually in a digital experience that we can build and do better things with. So we're focused on building tooling around that infrastructure. Can we get that data from the players back into a wider data management platform, which goes into the issues of frequency capping. I think a lot of it's an inventory problem. There's just not enough inventory, and we have to, we're early days right now. And then there's also problems where the same ad buy is going through multiple agencies on multiple buying platforms, and so you have, might have it be able to be frequency capped on one buying platform, but it can't be. But you don't know it's the same ad on a second buying platform, and there might be multiple SSPs and DSPs at play there. And so, we're working on kind of a meta open DMP that will track all this type of stuff together, to create a better experience there.
So the frequency capping issue comes up a lot for us. I mean, we just got an RFP yesterday that wanted to make sure that the advertiser only showed up one time in a show per day. And so, there is, as some agencies have called it, frequency capping is sort of the dirty little secret that exists in the market. And I agree with Adam. I really do think ultimately at the end of the day, it is the number of advertisers that have been in the space at the national level. Yes, there are technical issues around it, and yes, they're solvable. And certainly, with the bringing regional and local advertisers and the volume of advertisers that we can bring into it, can naturally help sort of course correct that. But it really is an issue. And having sort of spent my career in games, frankly, I'm really conscious of the customer experience and understand that frequency capping is an issue for consumers as well.
And it's a dirty little secret because if you only can show one ad to a user today, that means you can't sell 10 ads today, right? So it's like, okay, let's just show them and not talk about it. So it's a dirty little secret, but eventually, just like it's done in desktop and in mobile, all the right checks and balances come into place so that things like, we won't use fraud, but things like that don't happen, and the user experience is respected, and there's transparency in that, which really doesn't exist yet today in OTT, but will.
Raul, what do you think some of the challenges are right now in OTT that you're seeing? I mean, there are probably many.
There are many of them have been addressed already as far as frequency capping. What we're seeing from a Pluto perspective is being the publisher, but on the publisher side, there are no clear standards in the way we transact and the way we do business. it's an issue for the industry. I think we need to get some ways of formalizing things and having some form of standards that we can all transact on. We're very much one-offs right now, IO-based, agency-based, whatever the agency requirements are. It's not very fluid. It's not across the board. They may do device-specific, or we may just use the Pluto TV platform. So standardization is a big deal to us, and I wish we could come to a consensus on how to buy and transact and on OTT.
Right. So really, standard audience segments that are portable across all these individual walled gardens would probably be a great solve, but that takes the cooperation of many in order to set that up. So it's a large undertaking, but definitely necessary. So let's talk specifically about targeting, because I know that is probably the greatest benefit to IP delivered video. But there's also issues because traditionally TV was always meant to be broadcast, large, reach as many people as humanly possible with your message. But now we have the ability to go from broadcast to narrowcast. So how does this panel feel like people are addressing that dilemma? Scale and mass appeal and large audience versus hyper-local targeting. Anybody?
I have one. I mean, you said hyper-local. I have one thought just on targeting. If you do a media buy, let's say on Facebook, and you apply some sort of lookalike audience to that campaign, and the CPM could be $100, but the ROI was off the charts, right? And so I think that people will start shifting, at least advertisers. The dollar amount could still be the same. Again, if you're paying a higher CPM, but maybe you're reaching less people, but you're reaching the right people, and you're getting a higher ROI. These things are capable in OTT, and any type of targeting that you see that exists on desktop or mobile will be capable is currently capable with OTT. But maybe he has something on hyperlocal because that's his foray.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of solutions to advertising, and nobody's doing the same thing, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer. But we feel strongly that hyperlocal has to be part of that, and there's a long tail of advertisers that don't have budgets for $5,000 and $10,000 ad buys, but they could buy a $500 ad buy or a $1,000 ad buy or a $100 ad buy. And these numbers seem so small in the big picture that sometimes we might chuckle, but that tail is really long, and you start to add those up. There's a lot of money there to be had, and the key is you have to do it in a really low-cost way. And right now, if you have your sales team calling on these people and building ads for them and putting together video footage, there's no way that anyone can make any money doing that. But if you can, there's so many tools just here in this room that can help people do that at such a lower cost than they ever could do before and at higher quality. And if you can automate some of that and put it into a self-serve format where you can have that money coming in at $100, $200, $500 a pop, and nobody has to handle them or talk to them or do anything, there's a lot of money to be had. And we feel really strongly that as part of this solution, there needs to be a self-serve, long-tail model to really capture the value that can be added when you really hyper-localize brands and hyper-localize content.
That's a good point. So that brings us to, you're saying automation, which is also known as programmatic. And programmatic's got a bit of a PR problem lately just because that word can sometimes be thought of as bidding on remnant space, but that's actually not true. It's really just having machines do the execution of a predetermined ad buy, and it can be very efficient in creating scale, even when you're hyper targeting. Adam, MadHive has a great approach to programmatic where we can keep it safe. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's a complex issue with programmatic, especially in OTT. There's you don't really, once you go, the SSPs that are involved right now don't really onboard the inventory in safe ways, and so it's hard to know, and you still have a lot of the issues that programmatic does have with the bad word, is that you have one SSP selling to an exchange which sells to another SSP and down the tunnel, and it's hard to really know what the quality is of the original inventory, which brings back the problem of fraud and machines buying things. And so we're kind of focused on doing direct implementations of RTB and whatnot. We were just talking, Raul, about doing that right now on a direct deal basis with going around the SSPs and exchanges to do that can directly, so we can have proper attribution, so we can get back to can can we show that a click on mobile that bought the Charmin was originally shown on OTT, and show a provenance of that data there, and that's where I think things are going, and what we're testing now.
Right.
So we've built a self-service platform for developers, and we have a self-service for advertising, but we haven't exposed it yet. And so we've brought on maybe 500 or so developers. We just basically did what we did on mobile. I think if we fast forward and say, what does a perfect world look like in OTT? It's going to look like a combination of this. It's going to be a self-service to where any local business would be able to log in, just like setting up a Google AdWords account, and be able to buy media, target audiences. That's all location-based. Second thing is you're going to have all sorts of interesting data about the users and about the actual video content broken down. So video isn't necessarily contextual. Being able to pass that data out or sell that as a extension to a direct sold campaign, meaning Tegna or whomever else is going out directly to the agency and saying, okay, our typical CPM is $40 for this campaign, but because we know you're placed here and here and here, it's $60 or $70 or $80.
Right.
And then the final thing is that all of the different networks are setting up, in the right exchanges, setting up private marketplaces, because those are ways that they can essentially put ad dollars in there. And then the final is dump everything off into exchanges for programmatic.
Right.
I think when that stack is all built out, I think it's going to not only increase revenues for the networks that are looking for that, but it's just the right flow, and essentially what exists today on the other platforms.
Great, thanks for that. That's a good answer. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and I really wanted to wrap up on a positive note, because we talked about a lot of the challenges and a lot of the problems in the industry, but I think it's really, it's also quite hopeful, because we do have a lot of thought leaders here who have solutions. So, why don't we start end off with everybody giving us an example of a solution to some of the problems that we've talked about, something that you're developing or that you've seen being introduced that's a great solve for some of these problems. And I can start. Jim, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Hello?
Yeah.
Let's see. We're in a unique position. We work with a number of different content providers who are all looking to solve the same thing. And I think you've kind of heard it up here that all these publishers, these networks, these aggregators are all looking at different solutions. And so for us, we're bringing revenue to these partners. We're partnering with them to look at these solutions. Raul talked about standardization. I think that is something that we're really interested in being involved in, just simply because the place where we sit. So for us, we work with Pluto, we work with MadHive. MadHive providing a lot of solutions for us around some of the areas that we're hearing as pain points for our partners and pain points for the industry are really about standardizing tags for data, reporting and targeting, engagement vehicles, lighter engagement vehicles, and then also the ability to not only frequency cap within a network, but across networks. And so these are areas that we're optimistic about. And again, from where we sit, we see an opportunity to kind of partner with all these networks to do that.
Anybody else parting words on solutions that they're working on?
Well, if I can add to that,
Yeah.
What we're trying to do at Pluto is building niche programming, niche channels. We're very much in the long tail business, and so we spent the last 2 years proving the model. We've proven it. We have a huge user base. Millions and millions of users have found us organically on any OTT device out there, and what we're excited about is that there is life for a long tail content. One example I can give you is our pro wrestling channel with WWE. We launched a pro wrestling channel, live, linear, 24/7. We launched it about 3 weeks ago or so. And it is a top 5 performing channel for us right now. And you think it's a very nostalgic programming that maybe people who grew up with wrestling would start watching it, and that's how they discovered the channel. But no, it's an entirely young audience that's into it, right? And so we're finding niche audiences on content that has, doesn't necessarily have a shelf life. So what this tells us is that we're really much in a space where cable was in the 80s or the early 90s, where you're trying to build channels, niche programming for an audience that necessarily wasn't there, but now we look at cable, look where it is, and we're banking that that's the future for OTT as well, where niche programming is the solution.
Great.
Raul, I think that's a testament to your analytics and to understand that data, right? And believe it or not everyone, at least the people we've talked to, actually have some of that insight. And so I agree with you. We're probably like living in the 80s. The only difference is now is there's all this great data at our fingertips, which is real time to quantify it. I think for my parting words is a newcomer to this space. And Jim, you were in gaming. And our customers, in our last business were Candy Crush and these guys that are the biggest spenders on mobile. I mean, we're talking $20, $30 million a month to acquire users to crush gems, right? And, they didn't just produce an app and then start spending money. No, what they did is they would split test the hell out of that user experience. And then they would optimize that user experience for what's called a lifetime value, so they know what a customer's worth. And then they would then change that experience based upon what traffic source that customer came in from. So if that customer came from Google, maybe they would have a different experience. And so they would be able to match up the source of where they acquired that customer to the experience and come up with a value of that customer. I think what's really important for OTT and for the players is for them to be able to optimize those experiences, to run split tests, and to be able to quantify the value of those users in each one of those segments and where they're acquiring those users. Until they do that, it's going to be very hard for them to figure out an acquisition strategy to acquire customers. Right. And it'll be throwing good money after bad. And that's one of the common threads that we've seen, is that everyone rushed to go create an OTT app because it was the thing to do. And are we making money yet? Oh, I don't know. How much are our users worth? We don't know. I think that's the first thing, is for them to figure that part out. Yeah. And I'm sure the startups like Pluto are figuring that out. The bigger companies, are struggling to get into that gear because they move slower.
Right. We've got about 1 minute.
The future state that we're really excited about is we talked a lot about data informing ad buys here. The problem is that there's walled gardens between every single OTT network, and we're working on a decentralized way to connect those data sources together for targeting in general, so we can marry data sources together and then have proper data attribution back to each data source itself. So those ad buys are possible and have a cooperation between all the players involved.
Yeah, that creates some really great reporting, I would imagine, too.
I'll take
Jim,
the last 30 seconds if I can.
Sure.
I just think that it'd be really interesting to see where we're all sitting here in 10 years. We'll be talking about this as if it's every day. But our real focus is in trying to use metadata to match up that hyperlocal content with the J bar and the L bar on the screen. So not only you're watching wrestling, but you're seeing wrestling ads, wrestling content, wrestling events, wrestling other things that go with that mashed up right on the screen at the same time using just metadata.
Great. All right, I guess that's, unless you have one more comment?
Just one last thing. I mean, we started out talking about what is OTT, and I think what you've heard here today is there are lots of options in OTT. There are lots of different networks, there's lots of different solutions, and I think just back to the pain point of the industry is really sort of making sense of it all. And I would say that one thing that Premion is doing is creating sort of that one-stop shop for, at least for local and regional advertisers, because it really is. I mean, it's a confusing space, and we're all making sense of it as we go along in some respects, and leveraging what we've learned from our past experiences in other areas. But really, the opportunity here is to help the industry make sense of all of it, and I think the team up here is, we may not know it all, but at least we're sort of entrenched in it. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thank you all for listening, and these guys will be available for a few minutes if you want to ask some questions. They're great people to talk to. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.